Have you ever wondered why you can binge video games for hours, but the thought of 30 minutes of studying makes your chest tighten? Or why scrolling on TikTok feels addictive, yet reading a book puts you to sleep after 5 minutes? Could it be that we've been tricked, by our own biology, into loving what drains us, and avoiding what builds us? If that sounds familiar, then this video might just change how you see everything. Imagine this: you can play games for hours, totally focused, immersed, fully awake. Or you can scroll through endless videos and reels, news, memes, dopamine shots, without even realizing time has passed. But the moment you even think about sitting down to study, going for a jog, or tackling a serious project, your body slows down, your mind resists, every part of you starts making excuses. Why? The culprit is something we all carry within us: dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. Dopamine makes us feel good when we receive a reward. When you game, scroll, or chase novelty, your dopamine spikes rapidly. But when this stimulation happens too often, the brain becomes desensitized. It no longer gets excited by normal effortful things like reading, working out, or learning. So even though these activities are beneficial, they start to feel dull, unmotivating, even painful. But what if we could flip that around? What if the key to reclaiming motivation isn't in fighting your brain, but in retraining it? That's where Stoic philosophy and neuroscience come together. Through a practice called dopamine detox, spending intentional time away from high-intensity stimulation, you can reset your brain's reward system. Suddenly, things that used to feel boring begin to feel meaningful again. And with a Stoic mindset, we learn not to be ruled by fleeting emotions or instant pleasure. Instead, we see every challenge as a chance to strengthen our willpower, focus our attention, and reclaim control over our time and energy. This video will walk you through how I personally reset my relationship with difficult things, how I tricked my brain into craving growth, not comfort. We'll dive into both the science of dopamine and the wisdom of Stoicism, uncovering how to transform mental resistance into unstoppable momentum. It starts with how the brain processes effort and reward. When you pick up your phone to scroll social media, everything feels light, instant, satisfying. But the moment you sit at your desk, ready to study or push your body through a workout, everything shifts. Your limbs feel heavier, your attention scatters, even your breath tightens, like you're preparing for battle. What's happening? It's not just about the physical difference between the tasks. It's about how the brain rewards them. Easy tasks, like watching YouTube shorts, gaming, or checking messages, give you instant dopamine hits. It's like mental fast food: fast, tasty, and rewarding, but not nourishing. These quick rewards make the brain say, "That was easy. Let's do it again." So we get trapped in a loop, chasing stimulation that takes zero effort. But hard tasks, like learning something new, writing, or holding a plank, ask for delayed gratification. There's no immediate pleasure, no applause, no likes, just quiet effort. That's why they feel so unrewarding at first. So, why do we hit play with excitement but pause in dread when facing a single unread page? The Stoic philosopher Seneca said it best. Difficulties strengthen the mind, just as labor does the body. That's not just poetic, it's biological. The struggle isn't the enemy, it's the pressure that sculpts our willpower. Every challenge is a silent invitation to grow, to tap into strength we never knew we had. Yet, when we avoid hard things, we bury that potential. We stay on the surface, never diving into the deep ocean of our inner resilience. Let's take a real-world example, Andrew. I met Andrew at a time management workshop. A smart guy. Funny too. He told us he could sit and game for 3 hours straight, barely blinking, his hand glued to the mouse. But when he tried to study for even 30 minutes, he'd get fidgety, restless, and shut his books in frustration. He said, "I don't get it. I want to succeed, but my brain just taps out." And that's exactly the point. Andrew wasn't lazy. His brain was just wired, like many of ours, to expect quick rewards. In that sense, he was no different from a lab rat pressing a lever for a treat. In those famous studies, rats pressed the dopamine lever endlessly. But when the reward was blocked, they stopped. They didn't just slow down, they collapsed into passivity. No drive. No curiosity. No hunger. Sound familiar? That's what happens when we train our brains to only respond to stimulation. We lose touch with the deeper rewards, the kind that come from patience, growth, and effort. Our brains, much like Andrew's story from earlier, are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. That's not weakness, it's biology. The brain instinctively leans toward rewards that are easy, instant, and familiar. But here's the miracle hiding in plain sight. We can retrain it. We can actually teach our brains to take pride in patience, to find joy in effort. How? The key lies in understanding how our mind works, and changing our relationship with difficulty. The Stoics believed that it's not the circumstance that shapes us, but rather our perception of it. Pain, challenge, discomfort, these are not punishments. They're tools. Tools that, when used with intention, forge inner strength and sharpen our focus. Think about that for a moment. What if every time you sat down to study, you didn't see it as a burden? What if each page was a mini test, and each moment of focus, a small victory? That shift in perspective can change everything. Suddenly, you're not suffering through 30 minutes of boring reading. You're mastering a skill. You're crafting discipline. You're building the kind of mind that can't be shaken by discomfort. And that's power. So instead of running from hard tasks, you start asking better questions. Why am I avoiding this? What if I got excited about the challenge instead of dreading it? Which difficulty will help me become who I want to be? These aren't just rhetorical questions. They're psychological levers, hooks that tap into something deeper. Your curiosity, your potential, your identity. And with each repetition, you blur the line between easy and hard. You shift the scale. Here's the secret. The boundary between easy and hard is not fixed. It moves with your mindset. It bends with your perception. It responds to how you train your attention. The Stoics didn't wait for motivation to strike. They used each moment as an arena for building virtue, patience, endurance, resilience. Modern neuroscience backs them up. Each time you choose effort over ease, even in small ways, your brain begins to adjust. Each minor success, each chapter read, each workout completed, releases just enough dopamine to make the effort feel worthwhile. That reward, although smaller, is deeper. It trains the brain to say, "This is good. Let's do it again." Over time, what once felt unbearable becomes a part of your routine. Not just manageable, but even meaningful. You stop flinching. you stop resisting. And you start flowing, with effort, not against it. Dopamine, often misunderstood as the pleasure chemical, is far more than that. It's the neurotransmitter of desire, the invisible thread that pulls us toward a future reward. Have you ever noticed how you can scroll YouTube for hours without blinking? But the very thought of journaling for 5 minutes or reading a chapter of a dense book makes your body tighten with dread? That's not a flaw in your character. It's how your brain was designed, to crave, to seek, to pursue. See, dopamine isn't about feeling good in the moment. It's about anticipating feeling good later. It fuels action. It's the spark that whispers, "Go get it." Not because you have it, but because you want it. This is where it gets fascinating. Dopamine doesn't reward you for achieving. It rewards you for chasing. That's why hours of gaming or social media feel so compelling. The pursuit never ends. Each like, each video, each level passed becomes a cue. This feels good. Do it again. But here's the catch. When your brain gets flooded with too much dopamine from high stimulation activities, your receptors dull. Just like overusing a perfume makes you stop noticing its scent, overstimulation numbs your brain's reward system. As a result, quieter, slower, and more meaningful efforts, like reflection, writing, studying, or mindful exercise, start to feel empty. They lack the punch, the thrill, the rush your brain now craves. What was once enough to satisfy you now feels boring. To illustrate this, scientists ran a chilling experiment. They wired rats with electrodes that directly stimulated the dopamine center in their brains. Each time the rats pressed a small lever, a jolt of dopamine hit their system. The result? They pressed the lever over and over, relentlessly, foregoing food, rest, and even water. But then, researchers injected a single dopamine-blocking agent. What happened next? The same rats that moments ago were obsessed with the lever now lay motionless. Not curious. Not restless. Not even hungry. They simply stopped caring. No dopamine. No drive. Now ask yourself, in what ways are we like those rats? When we overwhelm our minds with endless digital gratification, are we slowly disconnecting from the simpler, deeper joys of focused living? That's where Stoicism offers a lifeline. Instead of letting dopamine control us, Stoic thinking invites us to redirect it. To align it with long-term virtue rather than short-term thrills. We don't stop seeking, we just change what we seek. Imagine this, a rat, once obsessed with pressing a lever for a dopamine hit, suddenly stops. Not because it got bored. Not because it was tired. But because a chemical block shut down its dopamine response. Even when food was placed nearby, its favorite food, it didn't move. Didn't sniff. Didn't nibble. Just lay there, motionless, indifferent. This chilling experiment doesn't just highlight how dopamine works. It reveals a harsh but eye-opening truth. Without dopamine, we don't even have the drive to survive, let alone thrive. It's not motivation we lack, it's the urge to act. Dr. Andrew Huberman, a leading neurobiologist at Stanford University, often cites this very study. To him, it's not just an experiment, it's a mirror reflecting how all of us function. He reminds us, dopamine isn't the pleasure itself. It's the signal, the spark, that tells you, go after that thing. Even if it's far away. Even if it's difficult. So when you avoid that book, that workout, or that difficult conversation, you're not lazy. Your brain is just wired to conserve energy and seek the nearest, easiest reward. That realization is both liberating and empowering. You can stop blaming yourself for lacking discipline, and instead start retraining the craving mechanism that drives you. And here's where the Stoic mindset offers deep clarity. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In that single sentence lies a lifetime of self-mastery. You can't always change your environment, but you can change how you respond to it. And that response begins not with motivation, but with understanding how your brain tricks you into chasing short-term comfort. Let's return to that early morning run or the tough math problem on your desk. To your craving mind, they offer delayed gratification. The payoff isn't instant, it's weeks or months away. So what does your brain do? It lowers its expectations. It tells you, why bother? Wouldn't a snack and a scroll through Instagram feel better right now? But here's what most people don't realize. Your brain also seeks balance, a state known as homeostasis. When dopamine spikes from constant stimulation, think gaming, viral videos, junk food, your brain adapts. It starts lowering the number of dopamine receptors to protect itself. Just like a stadium limits its crowd to avoid a stampede. And here's the result. To feel the same excitement, you now need even bigger, faster, louder stimulation. What once satisfied you now leaves you numb. It's not just a dopamine surge, it's a dopamine trap. The problem isn't dopamine itself. It's how we let it control us, how we let it pull us toward the easiest pleasures and away from long-term progress. But here's the twist, dopamine can be your greatest enemy or your greatest ally, depending on how you train your mind to respond to it. Think about it. If you scroll social media for an hour, you're flooded with quick hits of novelty, humor, validation. That's your brain bathing in fast, cheap dopamine. Now compare that to the act of reading a book, or writing a few paragraphs. No applause, no instant buzz. It feels like pushing through molasses, heavy, slow, unrewarding. But that's not because those activities aren't valuable. It's because your brain hasn't learned to crave them yet. But what if it could? What if you trained your brain so well that difficult tasks became the treat? That's where Stoicism and neuroscience meet, right at the heart of your habits. The key? You need to reassociate dopamine, from passive consumption to active progress. Let's break it down. Instead of saying I'll study English for 2 hours today, start with bite-sized goals. 15 minutes of focused learning. Then a small reward, maybe a warm cup of coffee, or 5 minutes of light entertainment. Do this repeatedly. Eventually, your brain will begin to expect a dopamine reward after that 15-minute sprint of effort. It learns to link satisfaction not to avoidance, but to completion. And over time, those small wins snowball into lasting habits. That 15-minute English session turns into 30, then 45. And before you know it, discipline feels like desire. This is the trick, the gentle but powerful way you rewire your cravings. You don't fight dopamine. You harness it. You turn it from a force that drags you into laziness into a spark that pulls you into progress. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. To them, adversity wasn't something to run from, it was a companion, a sculptor of strength. As Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself before battle, the obstacle is the way. That mindset transforms how you wake up. The alarm clock no longer signals pain or pressure. It becomes your first challenge, your first win. You rise not with a groan, but with a quiet thought. This workout will make me stronger. That one sentence, it's dopamine in service of discipline. You've gone from avoiding effort to craving growth. From wishing it were easy to celebrating that it's hard, because now, hard means transformation. Understanding dopamine as the craving neurotransmitter allows you to reshape your habits at their root. You stop being a victim of your biology and become the master of it. You don't just do difficult things. You start to love them. And in that love, you discover a happiness deeper than pleasure. The happiness of ruling your own mind. Imagine your body as a sacred temple. Every cell, every bone, every spark of electricity running through your nerves. All working together with a single, unshakable mission. Balance, harmony, stability. That's what scientists call homeostasis, the body's built-in self-regulation system. And when it works well, you feel grounded, resilient, capable. But when it gets hijacked by dopamine overload, that's when the temple begins to crumble from within. You see, when the brain is hit over and over with strong dopamine waves, from flashy games, viral videos, endless social media loops, it doesn't just celebrate. It defends itself. It lowers the number of dopamine receptors to protect against the flood. Think of it like your temple building a thicker, taller wall to stop a storm surge. At first, the pleasure rush is exhilarating. A funny meme, a flash sale, a quick like on Instagram, it feels amazing. But soon, those same things don't hit as hard. They don't break through the wall anymore. And so you seek more. Bigger, louder, faster. You start chasing stronger thrills, not because you're greedy, but because your brain has numbed itself. Let's take something as simple as online shopping. At first, scoring a good deal brings a jolt of excitement. But after a while, one purchase isn't enough. You find yourself hunting nightly flash sales just to feel the same spark. Then it's unboxing videos. Then wish lists. Then full-on addiction. The same cycle plays out with TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. A few videos become a few hours. Suddenly it's midnight and your finger is still scrolling. Your eyes are dry. But your brain wants just one more. And while this digital feast feeds the craving, it also quietly robs you. You lose the joy of ordinary pleasures. A walk in the park. A deep conversation with someone you love. Even the calm of your own breath during a quiet moment. Why? Because those moments feel flat in comparison. Your brain has built such a high tolerance to stimulation that subtle joy now feels like silence in an empty hall. In many spiritual traditions, this descent is described in symbolic ways. The human soul is often likened to a vineyard planted by God. Each seed of virtue, like patience, wisdom, and kindness, requires temperance to grow. But when dopamine becomes the ruler of our choices, that vineyard, once lush and promising, dries out in pursuit of artificial rain. Both body and spirit have their own languages. And in moments of overstimulation, they begin to whisper the same thing. Slow down. Be still. Imagine a reservoir after heavy rainfall, its banks overflowing, threatening to burst. What's needed isn't more water. It's the draining, a conscious release to restore the natural level. In the same way, when dopamine floods our mind, the solution isn't to chase more excitement, but to let go. To pause. To allow stillness to bring the system back to balance. This is where the ancient voice of Marcus Aurelius speaks with rare power. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. These words don't just reflect Stoic philosophy. They echo something higher. They mirror divine wisdom. Because what if adversity is not your enemy? What if dopamine resistance is not your failure? What if every discomfort you feel is a hidden invitation? A sacred summons from your Creator to grow? In this light, dopamine tolerance, that numbness, that lack of motivation, isn't a curse. It's a test. It's a divine checkpoint asking you, will you push forward, even when pleasure doesn't guide you? Will you act, even when it feels hard? This reframes the entire struggle. No longer must you fear your cravings. No longer must you see fatigue as failure. Instead, these are now signals, flashing reminders that it's time to forge strength, not flee discomfort. The Stoics had a name for this mindset, amor fati, the love of fate. Not simply accepting what happens, but embracing it with gratitude. Why? Because every trial is seen as a divine refinement. Not punishment. Not bad luck. But sculpting. So now, picture this. You, sitting alone. No phone, no noise. Just you and your thoughts. You feel the restlessness begin to surface. But instead of running from it, you sit with it. And in that silence, a deeper question rises. Am I going to shrink back, or rise? This is where Stoic self-mastery begins. Not in crowds, not in comfort, but in the still moment where only your will stands between resistance and growth. To regain control over your life, you must first reclaim control over yourself. From a scientific lens, dopamine tolerance isn't just a chemical adjustment. It's a behavioral compass, a tool to help us shape a more intentional path forward. And when you grasp how it works, you're no longer wandering lost in an endless maze of information and distractions. Instead, you begin to choose your direction, patiently, purposefully. This is where ancient Stoic wisdom and modern neuroscience converge. Want to retrain your brain? Start with the simplest rituals. Read by candlelight, letting your eyes and mind adjust to slowness. Journal a single honest paragraph before bed. Meditate for 5 minutes in silence, just observing your thoughts pass by. Let each act be a spark. Let every moment be a neuron rediscovering the joy of simplicity. Because that is how you trick the brain. Not with hacks, not with force, but with space to breathe. You offer it a taste of true contentment, calm, earned, unforced. Then, when it returns to the louder world, it does so changed, with a memory of joy that doesn't need a screen or a thrill. And here's the most liberating part. When you truly understand homeostasis, when you learn to face dopamine tolerance instead of fear it, you unlock freedom. not the shallow freedom of doing whatever you want, but the deep, soul-level freedom of not needing what once controlled you. Freedom from chasing the next thrill. Freedom to find God in the quiet. Freedom to sit on a bike, feel the wind, and know, this is enough. Freedom to read a page and feel victory. Freedom to breathe deeply and give thanks without any reason at all. Because as every great spiritual tradition teaches, and as Stoic wisdom reminds us, it is through trial that grace is born. It is through restraint that we find power. And once you see dopamine tolerance as a teacher, not a curse, you are no longer its slave. You are its master. And the temple of your spirit is no longer ruled by emotion, but by clarity, patience, and faith. So, begin today. Welcome the hard moments. Bless the quiet. Face every difficult task with reverence. Because each one is shaping something sacred within you. Have you ever considered stepping away from everything for just one day, not as a punishment, but as a renewal? When we commit to a full day of dopamine detox, it's not about self-denial or harsh austerity. It's about cleansing the noise, gently peeling back the overstimulation that clouds our mind and dulls our spirit. From the moment you rise, you make a sacred pact. No phone. No social media. No endless music loops. No comfort snacks that once felt like emotional lifelines. Instead, each breath becomes your guide. You sit in stillness, listening to your heartbeat like it's the rhythm of the earth. You walk slowly, noticing the way sunlight falls on leaves, how the breeze carries a quiet kind of music. You open a journal and write, raw, unfiltered, without judgment, as your emotions untangle onto the page. And in that silence, something shifts. The brain, once overwhelmed by flashing lights, likes, sounds, and swipes, begins to breathe again. Its receptors, scorched by constant surges, start to recover. This is the miracle of homeostasis in motion. The body, left alone long enough, always knows how to heal itself. By the afternoon, even simple acts, like finishing a chapter of a book, doing 30 minutes of focused exercise, or sketching something silly on a notepad, start to feel alive again. Joy returns. But this time, it's not joy bought by dopamine spikes. It's the joy of effort, the joy of presence, the joy of simply being here. This is how we trick the brain into loving difficult things. By taking away the numbing noise, we let it rediscover the quiet pleasure of challenge. But let's be honest. Not everyone can dive headfirst into a full 24-hour dopamine fast. And that's okay. There's a gentler path, just as wise, just as transformative. It's called weekly dopamine fasting. Choose just one dopamine-rich habit to step away from for a few hours or a day. Maybe it's skipping your email refresh button. Maybe it's staying off YouTube or resisting that nighttime scroll through Instagram. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. But slowly, you'll notice a powerful shift. You become the one in control again. You choose what you give your attention to, not your cravings. And in that choice, you reclaim your time, your energy, and most of all, your mind. Imagine this: you begin your day completely disconnected, no social media, no morning scroll, not even your usual cup of coffee. At first, the absence feels unsettling. A strange emptiness creeps in. Your fingers twitch toward your phone. your mind searches for the usual dopamine fix. But then, something beautiful happens. After just a few hours of stillness, a calm begins to stretch across your chest. The silence that once felt intimidating now feels like a deep breath for your soul. And in that space of quiet, a powerful question rises. Do I really need all this noise to feel whole? Or have I just forgotten what stillness feels like? This isn't just theory. We've seen this transformation in real lives. Take Tim Ferriss, best-selling author of The 4-Hour Body. Tim realized that his smartphone had become more than a tool, it had turned into a digital drug. Each swipe, each notification, lit up his brain like a slot machine. So he did the unthinkable. He detoxed from his phone for several days. At first, he wrestled with discomfort. But by the second day, something clicked. His mind grew sharper. His focus returned. And most importantly, his love for solving hard problems, the very spark of his motivation, came back to life. Tim's journey proves a critical truth. Dopamine detox isn't a burden. It's a homecoming. A return to your original clarity, your raw energy, and your deep-rooted passion for growth. You see, in life, we stand between two extremes. On one end, letting our brains chase temporary thrills. And on the other, choosing to cultivate a quiet, stable inner world. A world where true values rise like clear water from a deep well. Whether you choose a full 24-hour detox today, or simply cut down your screen time once a week, the goal is the same. To reignite your authentic enthusiasm. You begin to notice the joy in subtle things again. The peaceful rhythm of your breath. A single, sharp idea landing in your journal. The steady drip of sweat as you push yourself to new limits. That's when you realize, dopamine detox isn't just a single event. It's a cycle of awareness. Detox, recovery, re-stimulation, detox again. Each time you go through this loop, it becomes smoother, faster, and more powerful. You gain strength, not from avoiding pleasure, but from mastering it. And with each completed cycle, your brain begins to crave clarity over chaos, and purpose over distraction. Now imagine this. A week, a month, a year from today. You glance back at the old version of yourself who once dreaded hard tasks and lived on autopilot. You'll smile, not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. So, are you ready? Are you willing to trade 24 hours of digital noise for a lifetime of motivation and inner peace? Can you challenge yourself, just for one day, to hear the whispers of your own untapped potential? And if you've ever tried this, have you noticed changes in your energy, your clarity, your focus? Let us know in the comments, because your story might just inspire someone else to begin. Have you ever noticed how much more satisfying a break feels after you've actually earned it? I still remember it vividly. 4 hours of deep focus, reading, researching, refining my content, brick by brick, building my YouTube channel with purpose. Then, the screen fades into black. The game loads. For one precious hour, I dive into a virtual world, laughing, relaxing, letting go. And because I earned it, it felt amazing. But as the clock ticked past the 60-minute mark, I paused and asked myself a deeper question. Was this 1 hour of leisure enough to fuel my return to the grind? The answer lies in one of the most powerful psychological techniques I've ever applied. The conditional reward strategy. Simple in theory, profound in impact. This isn't just about taking breaks. It's about designing a structure where the brain learns to associate challenge with reward, so that what once felt difficult begins to feel exciting. Here's how it works. You set a rule. No game. No YouTube. No social scroll. Until you've completed a meaningful, low dopamine, high effort task. Why does this matter? Because dopamine is not just a pleasure chemical. It's the neurotransmitter of desire. It drives us to pursue rewards, especially when the outcome requires effort. Every time you complete a challenging task, whether it's writing a script, solving a problem, or learning a new skill, your brain responds by releasing dopamine in proportion to your investment. But here's the catch. When your brain is constantly soaked in high dopamine hits, from endless entertainment, fast food, flashy apps, it starts to tune out the subtle satisfaction that comes from doing real work. Suddenly, even picking up a book or opening your laptop feels heavy, uninviting, draining. This is where conditional rewards come to your rescue. They flip the script. Instead of indulging first and working later, you discipline yourself to work first, then reward. And just like Epictetus once said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That quote isn't just philosophical poetry. It's a battle-tested roadmap for retraining your brain. With each success, you create a new loop. Effort, completion, reward, satisfaction. Soon enough, your brain starts to crave the completion just as much as the reward. It begins to enjoy the process, not just the payoff. But there's one more crucial piece. The effort-to-reward ratio. Too generous a reward, and your brain becomes lazy, losing the motivation to work. Too stingy, and you risk burnout or apathy. The sweet spot lies in personalizing the balance. Maybe 30 minutes of hard focus earns you 10 minutes of a podcast. Or finishing a writing draft buys you a slow walk with your favorite playlist. Whatever the ratio, the rule must be clear and consistent. Over time, this strategy does more than help you finish tasks. It reshapes your character. You stop chasing instant pleasure, and start building lasting purpose. So next time you sit down to work, ask yourself, what reward will I unlock with this effort? You'll be surprised at how motivated you become, not by the treat itself, but by the pride of earning it. One of the simplest yet most effective conditional reward rules I apply in my daily life is this. For every 1 hour of focused deep work, I earn 15 minutes of guilt-free entertainment. Let's say I dive into a demanding 60-minute session of writing scripts, refining ideas, or conducting deep research. Once I finish, I don't just rest, I celebrate. I let myself enjoy 15 minutes of casual gaming, scrolling social media, or catching up on light-hearted content. And here's the magic. Because the reward is earned, it becomes sweeter. Because it's brief, it keeps me wanting more only after I've put in the effort. This rhythm, work and reward, discipline and delight, keeps me from spiraling into burnout and stops me from seeking escape before I've even begun. It creates a loop of anticipation. I don't dread the work. I look forward to the break that follows it. And I'm not alone in using this principle. Take Naval Ravikant, the tech entrepreneur and modern-day philosopher. He structures his day into focused blocks of productivity. And each block is paired with a conscious, nourishing reward. After a heavy morning of creative output, Neville doesn't collapse into mindless scrolling. Instead, he treats himself to a gentle walk, a cup of freshly brewed coffee, or soothing jazz music. This intentional habit stacking not only preserves his mental clarity but also turns work into something worth doing, because pleasure patiently waits at its end. This isn't laziness. It's discipline paired with wisdom. And that's precisely what Stoic philosophy encourages. We are not meant to surrender to our cravings. We are meant to train our desires. We choose when and how to enjoy, not by denying ourselves joy, but by earning it. Conditional reward is not a loophole, it's a lever. One that teaches your brain that discipline leads to reward, and not the other way around. When you enforce the rule, no reward before the work is done, you're not just completing a task. You're exercising the muscle of self-control, one of the most cherished virtues in Stoicism. Epictetus would call this mastery of the self, the quiet triumph of will over whim. Think of it like this. Every time you finish a hard task and give yourself a small reward, you're not just checking a box. You're placing a brick into the foundation of your future success. Each reward becomes a badge of honor, a sign that you did the hard thing and came out stronger. And as those badges accumulate, you start to see something remarkable. The more you succeed, the more you crave the challenge, not the escape. That's how motivation transforms. That's how you trick your brain into loving the grind. And it's not limited to productivity. This works whether you're trying to learn a new language, improve your fitness, build your personal brand, or simply develop more discipline. Start small. Choose one task. Set a simple, meaningful reward. Stick to it, no cheating, no exceptions. Within a week, you'll begin to notice something beautiful. Your brain stops resisting. It starts to anticipate the joy after the effort. And eventually, starting difficult work doesn't feel like a burden anymore. It becomes a natural rhythm, like breathing. So now, you've learned how to train your brain with conditional rewards. But are we done yet? Not quite. Let's zoom out and see how all these strategies, dopamine detox, habit stacking, and conditional reward, combine to form a complete system of motivation and personal growth. Let me ask you something. What if you could wake up every day and face your most draining task, not with dread, but with quiet confidence? What if you could look at discomfort and whisper to yourself, "I'm ready for this"? That's the power of Stoicism. And in this part, we're going to wield that power to master dopamine, not by resisting it with sheer grit alone, but by redirecting it through timeless mental strategies. The first, premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils. Don't let the Latin intimidate you. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. It's the art of expecting life to throw curveballs, then stepping up anyway. When you imagine the worst-case scenario in advance, waking up bone-tired, your to-do list a mountain, your motivation running dry, something powerful happens. Your brain stops panicking. It stops searching for the dopamine shortcut. Because you've already faced the hardship in your mind and survived it. This simple exercise activates a deeper layer of readiness. Your nervous system no longer fights discomfort, it recognizes it. And in that familiarity, the resistance fades. Suddenly, 30 minutes of reading, exercising, or focused work feels less like punishment. and more like a test you've already trained for. That's how willpower begins to take the reins from dopamine. Now pair that with the next Stoic pillar. A more fatty, the love of fate. Not tolerance. Not reluctant acceptance. Love. To the Stoics, fate wasn't an obstacle, it was the very canvas of greatness. When something doesn't go your way, your body's tired. Your mind's sluggish. Your efforts go unrewarded, you don't curse it. You lean into it. You say, this too is part of my growth. That shift in mindset does something miraculous. It turns low dopamine moments, the boring, the slow, the unrewarding, into sacred opportunities. You stop needing every task to feel exciting. You stop craving validation after every action. Instead, you begin to savor the silence, the slowness, the simplicity, and discover that meaning hides there too. It's in this very space that you build something far stronger than fleeting motivation. A steel-like spirit. A spirit that doesn't need noise to feel alive. That doesn't collapse when it doesn't feel like it. That sees discipline not as duty, but as devotion. And how do we keep that spirit awake? Through a third Stoic practice. Emotional journaling. Not just writing thoughts, but recording your battles. What you resisted. What tempted you. Where you stumbled, and where you stood tall. When you capture these reflections each day, on paper, not screen, you create a mirror for the soul. You track your transformation from dopamine seeking to dopamine leading. You see your weak spots. Yes. But you also see your victories. And each one becomes fuel. So when the next challenge comes, you're not empty-handed. You're carrying a journal of proof. I've been here before. I've conquered this. I'll do it again. By applying these Stoic mental tools, premeditation, love of fate, and reflective writing, you no longer need to wait for motivation to strike. You become your own spark. And as you practice this day by day, your brain slowly shifts. Effort becomes familiar. Hardship becomes welcome. And dopamine begins to align with your values, not the other way around. It may sound too simple, but here's the truth, most people go through their days reacting, not reflecting. That's why we begin with one humble yet powerful question. If today, I only had a plain bowl of rice, would I still feel happy? This single question may seem modest, even strange, but it strikes right at the heart of our dopamine-driven lifestyle. In a world flooded with stimulation, from gourmet meals to viral content, we've trained our brains to expect more, constantly. So when we strip that away, even in thought, we create a powerful mental reset. By asking this question every morning, you're not just challenging your cravings. You're training your brain to lower its baseline, to find contentment not in excess, but in simplicity. And here's the magic. Over time, you'll notice that your need for intense rewards fades. Your happiness becomes quiet, but unshakable. The Stoics knew this well. Their joy didn't come from dopamine hits, it came from living in alignment with virtue, with reason, and with peace. That's where the second practice enters. Writing hand emoji, journaling, especially as Seneca prescribed it. More than just scribbling thoughts. This habit becomes your personal compass, helping you observe and evaluate your desires in real time. Every time you feel an urge, whether it's to open social media, grab that snack, or binge another episode, pause and write. Note: What triggered the urge? How intense was it? What emotion preceded it? This slow, handwritten practice is a low dopamine activity in itself. It gives your brain time to reflect before reacting. And when you revisit these notes at the end of the week, patterns emerge. Maybe you crave stimulation right after stressful meetings. Maybe you scroll TikTok whenever you're alone at night. These moments aren't flaws. They're clues. Clues you can use to reshape your daily rhythm, balancing effort and rest, aligning challenging tasks with meaningful rewards, and making space for deep, fulfilling leisure instead of mindless consumption. And here's something vital. This process isn't abstract. It follows a clear Stoic framework of white tick mark emoji, cause-effect solution. The cause? Dopamine mechanics. Your brain prefers instant gratification, resisting anything that takes time or effort. The effect? Tolerance. You need more stimulation just to feel normal, and regular tasks start feeling unbearable. The solution? A reset, not just of habits, but of expectations and identity. Through detox and Stoic disciplines, you begin reversing this pattern. Premeditatio malorum prepares your mind to face hard days. Amor fati helps you welcome low stimulation moments with gratitude. Self-reflection and journaling make your progress visible and your resolve stronger. But it doesn't stop there. To reinforce this inner transformation, we bring in supportive physical activities. You don't need anything extreme, just to walk in the morning light. A few yoga stretches in silence. Or a 10-minute seated meditation, listening only to your breath. These gentle movements may seem small, but they offer stable, sustainable dopamine. Not the chaotic spikes of digital addiction, but the calm rhythms that your brain can trust. When your body and mind begin to align with Stoic rhythm, something remarkable happens. Your inner energy builds naturally, not from sugar highs or screen time binges, but from within. Suddenly, a long study session or a strategic business plan no longer feels like a burden. It becomes a mirror, reflecting your discipline, your focus, your self-worth. And with continued practice, you reach a higher state. A place where strength isn't just surviving adversity. It's thriving in it. You begin to elevate your character. Because no dopamine rush, not even the most viral video, the most thrilling game, can rival the quiet, unshakable pride of knowing you did the hard thing. That's the real reward. The invisible trophy of self-control. The warmth of autonomy. The soft glow of integrity that comes only when you've chosen challenge over comfort. So the next time you're tempted, whether by a mindless scroll, an easy excuse, or a wave of fatigue, stop. Revisit Stoicism. Repeat the truth. I accept and cherish this fate. And whisper to yourself, if today I only have a bowl of plain rice, will I still be happy? When your answer is yes, genuine and unforced, you'll know, you've done it. You've conquered dopamine. You've mastered willpower. And more than that, you've turned difficult tasks into genuine happiness. This isn't just brain training. It's soul transformation. Stoicism isn't a dusty philosophy from marble statues and old scrolls. It's a living vehicle that carries you forward, into the strongest, most resilient version of yourself. Every small decision, every disciplined breath, every journal line and silent morning becomes a chisel, shaping you, refining you. You are no longer a slave to cravings. You are the sculptor of your will. After this long and enlightening journey, let's pause and reflect on what we've truly uncovered. You've learned that dopamine isn't merely a pleasure switch. It's a powerful motivator, a key to unlocking effort, habit, and purpose. But when uncontrolled, excess dopamine floods the brain, downregulates receptors, and drives us into addiction, to games, to social media, even to substances. This, right here, is the root cause behind why studying feels unbearable, why exercise is skipped, and why new habits never stick. But now you know the antidotes. You've gathered tools, sharpened your awareness, and reprogrammed your responses. So let's make it interactive. Let's anchor the learning. Brain emoji, your turn. Which of these methods best helps you trick your brain into loving challenging tasks? A. Practicing the dopamine detox technique to reset the brain. B. Applying the conditional reward strategy to balance work and reward. C. Journaling and adopting Stoic thinking each morning to stay centered. D. Increasing social media usage for more dopamine highs. Careful. Take a moment. Choose the answer that resonates with you most. Then share in the comments why. Let's grow together through honest reflection and shared insight. And if this video helped spark clarity or inspired action, consider leaving a like, subscribing for more Stoic-driven self-mastery, and sharing it with someone who's ready to take the next step in their journey. Remember, your mind is your most powerful ally, when you learn to lead it. Until next time, stay grounded, stay intentional, and as always, face the difficult path with joy. Minute video ending script. Musical note emoji, calm. Cinematic piano music fades in. Background, golden sunrise over a quiet mountain top. Speaking head emoji, deep, steady male voice. Most people run from hard things. But you're learning to lean into them. Because you've realized, it's not pain you fear. It's the version of you that emerges after the pain. The stronger you. The focused you. The free you. Herb emoji, the Stoics didn't seek comfort. They sought clarity. They trained their minds to love what others avoid. To embrace what others fear. Speaking head emoji. So if it's heavy, lift it. If it's hard, go through it. If it hurts, listen to it. Because inside the difficulty, is the version of you you've been searching for. Fountain pen emoji, on-screen text appears slowly. Train your brain. Love the hard things. Become unshakable. Headphone emoji, voice continues. Soft fade out. If you felt this, don't just watch. Subscribe. Reflect. And begin.